This is ThriveCasters,
Thriving, not surviving.
tackling youth issues that matter to you.
Welcome to this week's episode of ThriveCasters, where we'll be discussing how important is sleep. Your hosts are Ashlee and Zakiya, and we are joined by Lisa Artis from the Sleep Council. Lisa, it'd be lovely to just hear a little bit more about your job role and who you are as a person. Go for it.
Hi, so I'm Lisa Artis. I am Deputy CEO, of the Sleep Charity, and the Sleep Council actually joined forces with the Sleep Charity in July, which was a really exciting time for us. So we're now one organisation empowering the nation to sleep better. So we've got a big vision, we've got lots of exciting projects in the pipeline, and we're going out there championing a good night's sleep.
Lovely. So this week's episode, a study from King's College London found that over lockdown there was a spike in instances of poor sleep, especially among younger people, 16 to 24 in particular. And even before lockdown, the temptation to watch another episode rather than go to sleep is already there. So in this episode, we're asking why sleep important and how do we get those extra few hours? And hopefully Lisa can give us a little bit of insight on that. So the first important question is, why do we need sleep? The obvious one.
And it's a question that we always get asked, but funnily enough, you won't even believe this, but actually no one really knows why we need to sleep. What we do know is that we actually can't survive without it. It is the third pillar of health alongside diet and exercise, and it plays a really important part in keeping us physically and mentally well. What we do know is that when we do sleep well, we perform better in sports, we do better with our schoolwork and our exams, we actually behave better, so we're more patient, we're less grumpy, less irritable, we look better. So when you sleep well, you've got your hair shinier, you don't have bags under your eyes, and it stops you getting lots of spots as well, and you feel better. So when we've slept well, we just generally feel like we're feeling fit, we're feeling sharp, and we're ready to take on the rest of the day.
Nice and concise. But if that's the case, if I'm looking better, I'm feeling better and all of this, then how have we ended up in a position in at least our society where sleep is the last thing on the list? I mean, it's under diet, it's under exercise, it's under job, it's under everything you can think of. How do you think we've ended up in that position?
Absolutely, and sleep is really undervalued, and I think we've got to that position because the society we live in now is so fast-paced. We're doing so much in a single day now, more than we ever used to do. And the onslaught of technology has meant that we're so connected. So we don't ever have that time to switch off anymore. So not to sort of show my age or anything, but I remember when the TV used to go off at like 11 o'clock at night, and that was it. We didn't have TV for the rest of the evening. You know, we didn't have the internet. And then when we did get the internet, it was dial-up and it was horrendous. So you couldn't go onto Amazon and start buying things at 2 o'clock in the morning. So what's happened is we are using every part of our day to do all these things that we couldn't do before. And actually what we do find as well is that people will gladly try and wake up an hour early so they can go to the gym to exercise. And we're like, well, hang on a minute. You'll actually get more benefit from a good night's sleep and sleeping well than actually setting your alarm at an extra hour early to get up, just so you can go and work out, because actually there's research out that shows you can't exercise to your full potential if you're sleep deprived. So it's really important, I think, that people do start to prioritise sleep again. And I think sleep trackers and sleep apps, when they sort of came on board sort of maybe 5 years ago, like really started to come to the forefront of technology, they were great in a sense that they actually started to make people a bit more sleep aware. We as a charity don't love them because we do find people can also fixate on them and they don't actually give accurate data. But I think they can be used as a way of, like people do with like diet and exercise, just monitoring sleep, just actually showing what good sleep habits are, and just getting people to recognise that actually some of them now say it's time to start winding down for bedtime. I think that's great, because that's something that we're really, really poor at doing, winding down before bedtime. We'd much rather be kind of rushing around, doing lots of different things or using social media, and then kind of hopping into bed and hoping that we'll fall asleep straight away. And obviously that just doesn't happen. We do need to make that time for our brains and our bodies to unwind before bedtime.
So would you say that, you're talking about how sleep trackers, they're a good start, but they're not the best start. So what kind of things are you trying to promote in order to get good sleeping habits out of people?
So firstly, I would always say to people that you shouldn't also fixate on how many hours of sleep you get. So obviously, you know, it's what's really easy with diet and exercise is with diet, you can tell people to eat 5 portions of fruit and veg a day, and you can just pick up the apple and eat it, and you've done it. Do you know what I mean? With exercise, you know, we talk about 30 minutes 3 times a week. So, you know, it's up to you to go out there and do that walk or that run or that cycle. You can't tell people to get 8 hours of sleep, because I might say to you that you must get 8 hours of sleep, and you go, well, I would love to get 8 hours of sleep a night, but I can't get more than 6. There's nothing I can do about that. So it's really important that we talk more about the quality of sleep people get. You know, there is obviously this general consensus that, you know, a sort of young adult, you know, would get 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And, you know, obviously that gives people a guideline, and everybody likes a guideline to work towards. But some people will function really well on 7, and some people might need more, like 10. You know, personally, like for me, you know, and I'm nearly 40, I need 9 hours of sleep. If I was to get 6 hours every night, I would not be a very nice person the next day. But
Same.
People who gladly get by on 6.5 hours function really well, actually would feel worse sleeping for 9 hours of sleep a night. So it's really important that we focus on quality of sleep. So actually it's much better to get 6 hours of good quality sleep than 8 hours of like what we call like interrupted sleep, where you wake several times in the night, and you struggle with your sleep that way. There are lots of things you can do, and I think people should also look at, there are all these top tips out there, and they're great, but not all of them will work for you, and they're not all, you don't need to do all of them. The best sleeper is somebody, if you ask a really good sleeper like what they do, they will say to you, I don't do anything. They really won't. They won't think about spraying lavender around their room. You know, they won't probably meditate or anything like that. And they probably will use the phone before bedtime, because they don't overthink sleep. And a lot of the time, most people struggle with their sleep because they start overthinking it. And it's awful. It's an awful vicious cycle, because we know how we feel when we don't sleep well. And, you know, we do feel drained the next day, and our brains are foggy. And I think if you've had 2 or 3 bad nights sleep, by the time it comes to the 4th night, you go into bed feeling anxious. You know, you're already starting to think, oh, if I don't sleep well again tonight, that's the 4th night, I'm going to feel awful tomorrow. You know, and it's a vicious circle, really, because obviously anxiety stops people sleeping, but you can't stop that thought once it's happening. So I think it's really important that you look at maybe the things that are maybe why you're struggling to sleep. So if it is anxiety, you know, you need to tackle that. So it could be about writing down your worries, or if you're someone who's really busy and you've got lots of things to do, it could be writing down like your to-do list before you go to bed. It does actually, I know it sounds really silly, but you do feel like you've offloaded onto paper. So it does actually help clear the mind a little bit. I think people who are suffering like with anxiety around bedtime, you know, are really, really good things like meditation and mindfulness and things like that. Now, like myself, meditation and mindfulness doesn't work for me. Actually, it's more like to stress me out before bedtime, because it's not something I enjoy. But I love reading. So I would use reading a book as part of my wind down routine, as part of relaxing. But that, again, that's not for everybody. If you don't particularly like reading, don't do it. Do you know what I mean? I would say don't do it. Do something that works for you. It's really important that we don't look at these sort of 10 top tips and think we have to tick them all off, because actually that becomes a really stressful hour before bedtime, that you go, I've got to read a book, I've got to have a warm bath, I've got to have a milky drink, I've got to spray pillows, you know, lavender pillow spray, you know, and it's like, I've got to meditate in that time. It's actually, that becomes a really stressful thing. It's really important that you pick what works for you. So again, you know, like caffeine, caffeine has no bearing on my sleep whatsoever, but I used to work with somebody who could not drink any kind of caffeinated drink after midday. It would impact on their sleep. So
it's a matter of finding what is right for you.
It is, and I know it sounds really kind of boring, but actually filling in a sleep diary is really useful in kind of working out what are the things that are impacting on you. So you will know if you're drinking caffeinated drinks in the evening and they're the days that you don't sleep well, maybe look at cutting that back to say 5, you don't have any caffeinated drinks after 5 p.m. If that still impacts on your sleep, bring it back to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be that for somebody who doesn't exercise, so it could be actually, if I put some exercise routine into my day, will I start to sleep better? Or you could look and go, actually, am I having my evening meal too close to bedtime? Am I having it at 8 o'clock and then trying to get to bed at 10 and fall asleep? Actually, if you've eaten something really heavy or anything spicy or anything like that, your digestive system's working in overdrive, and that's not conducive to a good night's sleep either.
So we're going to do a scientific investigation about what I need to do to get the best sleep.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know it's looking at your personal, your sort of personal lifestyle and sleep habits. We don't do all the same things. It isn't just about what you do in the hour before bed. It's also like what you're doing through the day. So it's like what you're eating and drinking in the day, how much you're exercising in the day, how much time outside have you spent. One thing what we found with lockdown was obviously because people were sort of limited at one point to having this like 1 hour outside going for a walk, that was impacting on people's sleep because they weren't getting enough natural light to kind of like boost their circadian rhythms and things like that. And also that we need that exercise also to kind of burn off some of that energy, to get our sort of bodies working, and all things like that contribute to sleep.
That's really interesting, and I like the fact that you talk about like the functions of kind of like sleep, but I'd like to know a bit more about how does sleep impact on mental health? Because I know you touched on anxiety, and I have this myself. Before I'm going to bed, it's like, okay, let's wind down, because if I don't get enough sleep now, that's going to impact me tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But yeah, what is the benefit of having a good night's sleep, and how does that impact your mental health moving forward in the long run as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sleep is so linked to obviously your mood. You know that when you have one bad night's sleep, how you feel the next day. We just touched earlier about it makes you feel a little bit impatient. You've got a bit of a foggy brain. You're slightly grumpier than normal. You might snap at your partner or your friend a bit easier. And if you think about if that rolls on and it's night after night of losing more and more sleep, that just heightens more. And there is a really close relationship between sleep and mental health. So lack of sleep can actually affect your mental health. But equally, if you've got any kind of mental health issue, that can also impact how well you sleep. So it's really important that when we look at both those, we actually address both issues, because they're so closely linked that often you can't deal with a mental health issue if you're not dealing with a sleep issue at the same time, and vice versa, because of the close relationship they have. We know that when we get good sleep, we're recharged, we're ready to face what life may throw at us, and it makes us more resilient. And we know that obviously with mental health, we start to become less resilient to things. And again, that's why sleep's really important, because it just boosts that again. And it just, like I just said, it just helps us to face what life is throwing at us, whether that's to do with schoolwork or friendships or relationships. We know that, trying to cope with any kind of feelings of stress or anxiety is much more difficult when we're tired. And that's because when we're stressed, we find ourselves struggling to sleep because it causes like hyperarousal.
It's one contributes to the other, and the other one contributes, and it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, and often lack of sleep can be the first indicator of a mental health issue, but equally a mental health issue could also be the first indicator of a sleep problem as well. So I was trying to get it the right way around. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? But
yeah.
they are so close that sometimes you're not sure which is the one that started first, because of how sleep impacts on mood, but also how when we're feeling low or stressed, we don't sleep as well. So it's a circle, and you need to address both issues.
And is it so much that you've got to do it both at the same time? So if when I'm fixing one, I've got to go with the other, otherwise it just won't work.
Absolutely. I think there wouldn't be very many instances where someone who is suffering with mental health won't probably have some kind of sleep issue there as well. Because sleep issues can take the form of many different things. So it could be struggling to fall asleep. So that's an issue. For some people, it's waking up several times in the night's the issue. Or for other people, it's waking early. So some people don't always relate those things to actually being sleep issues, but they are. So if you find yourself regularly waking up at sort of 5:30 every morning, that's an issue. But that could be an issue because of a mental health issue. So it's definitely important that both things are addressed at the same time. It's almost, if you don't address them both, then neither's going to get better properly.
So, okay, because the world that we live in, everything is all about go, go, go. It's never stop. You have to keep on grinding. And I think, especially with a lot of young people as well, there's almost this mentality of, if you're sleeping, you're not working hard enough. Especially when I was at university, it was like, oh my gosh, you're sleeping. Oh my God, you're not doing your essays. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. So I just wonder, like, how do we get out of that mentality? Because it feels like we're constantly told to work and not to sleep. I don't see many adverts telling me to sleep. I see many adverts saying, oh, maybe you should wake up at 5:30 and go on the grind, go to the gym, work out. And it's like, but I just want to rest. So what advice would you give to people like that? Because it's almost like we feel guilty for resting. So what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree with that. We have got this really sort of negative culture around sleep now. There's a lot of phrases out there like, sleep is for the weak, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Do you know what I mean? It's almost like if I'm sleeping, I'm losing out on other things that I could be doing. But actually, we need to change that. And that's why for us, we want to try and focus on a lot of the positive messages around sleep. So actually, why, rather than talk about, oh, if you don't sleep, it's going to kill you. Oh, that's so depressing. Do you know what I mean? And people don't want to hear that. It's a bit of a turn off, isn't it? Whereas if we talk about the positivities of a good night's sleep, i.e., it's actually going to help you do better in your exams. Therefore, it might lead to a better job and a better career and better money. Or it could be, like I said, you are just going to feel better in yourself. You're going to be able to take on the day. You're going to be able to meet your challenges. Obviously you can talk about the look side of things. You'll look better. There is a lot of research around how lack of sleep does contribute to obesity. And then that obviously in turn leads to like type 2 diabetes. So rather than actually going down the negative side of that, you know what I mean? It's talking about the positives. The other thing I don't think that helps is that we hear a lot of real like top business entrepreneurs who say they only sleep for 4 hours a night. We've had Winston Churchill, Maggie Thatcher, I think it was Bill Gates and stuff. They've all said, oh, we only need 4 hours of sleep. Absolute load of tosh. Do you know what I mean? They don't only need 4 hours of sleep. Chances are they're probably having a nap in the day and they're not telling us. But again, that doesn't provide the right message. It's almost saying, if you want to be at the top of your game, only sleep for a really short period of time, because you need to spend the whole rest of your day filling it with all your entrepreneurial ideas and things like that. And again, that's not very helpful. We do need to change this sort of culture that it is as important as diet and exercise to health, that actually you actually perform better, and actually you're more likely to succeed by sleeping well rather than trying to cut your sleep down. I don't think, like we've said, technology helps. Netflix actually said a couple of years ago that sleep was its biggest competitor, which is actually really sad, isn't it? Because, I can't believe that sleep would come up against Netflix. But basically, they want people to sit up and binge watch box sets. That's what, they want people to pay their subscriptions for, so they can do that. And obviously for us, that's like, oh, please don't stay up all night binge watching episodes. And, you know, we've all been there. You know, I've done it myself. It's like, oh, because I've got the whole 24 episodes, I'm going to stay up and watch the next 2. But we have people who stay up until way past their bedtime. Do you know what I mean? I'm not talking about an hour or so. I'm talking if their bedtime is 11, they're staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because they're so engrossed in this drama that they're watching, and they can just watch it. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to rewind time and go back when we didn't have all this technology.
I think it's quite interesting, actually. You talk about people staying up way past their bedtimes, but that's a term that we generally use when we're talking about really little kids.
Yeah.
Which is quite interesting because it's almost like, so you're an adult now, but you still have a bedtime. And do you think that's something that we need to encourage, that we need to talk about more, and maybe make adults feel that sense of responsibility still?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we always laugh as well, because we talk very much about like bedtime routines, and, you know, like, and people go, for goodness sake, a bedtime routine is just for kids. Actually, it's not, because you can't expect to have been doing work at 10 o'clock at night and then get into bed and hopefully go to sleep. You know, we need that hour before bed to relax. And that's what we do with children. We say to them, you know, you stop playing with your toys, you know, you have a bath, you have a book, and then it's bedtime. And it's almost like we should be doing very, very similar thing. You know, we don't have to be bath and book, but, you know, but it's actually, let's switch off all devices, including the telly, and do something else, do something different. Or if you are going to watch telly, make it something really like light-hearted. But I would love people to just challenge themselves and just give it a go and just see if it does improve the sleep. You know, for some people, if you sleep well, just carry on doing what you're doing, you know, that's fine. But if you are struggling with your sleep, why not challenge yourself in putting your devices away, switching off the telly, and actually doing things like having a bath or reading a book or meditating or listening to some like soothing music. Some people find it really beneficial to do things like colouring. So adult colouring books have become a real big thing, haven't they? Because they're really sort of therapeutic, and they make you focus on something else. Some people might want to knit or crochet, or, I mean, it's not for everybody, do you know what I mean? I'd be useless at knitting and crocheting. But some people might find that a really lovely way of relaxing before bed. So it's, you know, it's like when I said earlier, it's about finding what works for you, but trying to avoid using the screens. And it's so easy, I think, to get into bed and just go, I'll just have another look through social media, or I'll just check BBC News one last time, or I'll see what the latest rules are on lockdown. Is that the best thing that you want to be sort of digesting before bed? You know, lockdown and coronavirus, or I don't know. I mean, on social media these days, people share all sorts of stuff, and some of it's not very nice. And sometimes you think, is that the right thing that we should be doing before bedtime?
I think it's quite interesting, actually. You bring up corona, and sleep is a perpetual problem, but do you think that lockdown has had, I mean, it's obviously had its own impact, but what specific impact do you think that corona's had on sleep?
It's really funny. I think there's been 2 camps of people. We've had a lot of people who haven't slept well, who've struggled with their sleep, and that's been down to everything from obviously routines going out of the window, for people not kind of having that normal sort of day-to-day focus of either school or work or anything like that. But then we've had the other camp of people who, and I would say these are the sort of people, I don't know if you've heard of the terms, we call them morning larks and night owls. So a morning lark is somebody who likes to get up early in the morning and likes to go to bed early. When I say early, I don't mean like 7 o'clock, but they're not somebody who likes to stay up till midnight. So they function really well early in the morning, start to flag after lunch, and, you know, by 6 o'clock are no good to anybody. And then you've got night owls who absolutely struggle to get out of bed in the morning and really hit their peak kind of in the afternoon and work really well in the evening, want to go to bed later. And what happens is young people shift into that night owl mode, because as when you hit your teenage years, it's biological, you can't do anything about it, your body clock shifts. So this is why, young people, they get told they're being lazy because they won't get out of bed for school in the morning, but actually it is an actual shift in their body clock that happens, and that's why they do. So they're not lazy. They are lazy if they still want to be in bed at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That is being lazy. But naturally, they need to get up 1 or 2 hours later than they normally would have done. And they want to go to bed 1 or 2 hours later. And you will notice, people will notice if they've got teenagers in their house, that there's just a sudden shift where they're not sleepy at 9 o'clock anymore. They're sleepy at 11 o'clock. That's normal. And that's why a lot of teenagers have actually not done too badly in lockdown, because they've been able to sleep in later than they would do. So I have a teenage daughter who has to get up at like 6:45, absolutely hates it with a passion. Now in lockdown, has been getting up around 9 o'clock because I've got up, I've wanted to get a couple of hours of work done before they've got up. And then she's gone to bed later, but actually she's been a much nicer person. But she's been more productive, and she's just been, you know, her mood is better because it's actually, she's settled into her actual sleep rhythm. And what we do in teenagers and young people is we're forcing them against their natural body clock to get up earlier, and we want them to go to bed at 9 o'clock because us adults maybe want to go to bed at 10 and 11 and want an hour or so without them around. And actually teenagers have done quite well in lockdown because they've been able to shift their body clock to what it should be. And night owls as adults, so night owl people, have also done that because they've maybe not had to get up and have a daily commute to work. They've been able to actually get out of bed a bit later, and it's fitted into their schedule better. I'm a morning person, so it doesn't really matter to me, but my husband's a night owl. You know, he can still be wide awake at midnight, whereas, you know, I'm falling asleep at 10 o'clock on the sofa. So, but it's interesting that we shouldn't, you know, we do try to force people into obviously a 9 to 5 day, because that's obviously where society is, but it doesn't always work for a lot of people. You know, that's why there was a big sort of campaign and study down in London about trying to get schools to start later, because young people are just not at their best at sort of 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. They need to be starting lessons sort of more like 10, half 10. It never really got off the ground because obviously that does not fit with work life. So parents don't want their children to be going to school at 9 because they're supposed to be in the office by 9, and they don't want them staying at school till 6 o'clock because actually they want everybody home to have tea. So it's, you know,
find a way to put it together.
Yeah, and it's really difficult because obviously as well, you know, if you go on to college or university and then you know, and then you get a job, actually you've then got to be used to working usually a 9 to 5 job. I mean, you know, there are people obviously who work shift work, but the standard is, isn't it, kind of a 9 to 5 job. So you don't want to kind of get them into such a habit then they never ever want to get back up again at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Had an absolutely wonderful time having this conversation. We do actually have to try to wrap up. So just a last little bit. Any final tips, any recommendations that you want to make to young people about prioritizing sleep and getting more sleep?
I think what I would say is that sleep's really important. It's, you know, it's important to all aspects of life. You know, we should consider it as important as diet and exercise when it comes to looking after our health and well-being. And because we realise that teens are almost unique in the fact that we were just talking about their sort of biological clock, you know, their body clocks changing, and they're at a period of their life where they've got hormones, they're growing and they're developing, but they've also got the pressures of school and revision and exams. We've actually developed a teen sleep hub website, which is it's aimed at teenagers, and it means that it's not aimed at the parents, so it's talking to them about things that they can put in place, strategies that they can put in place. We talk about sleep diaries, we talk about body clocks and why it's okay to like want to sleep in the morning, why that's not wrong to feel like that. We look at like why sleep's important, you know, the processes that you go through when you sleep, so that they can be armed with the knowledge and the education around that. I think if we can educate young people, they will keep those habits as they enter adulthood. I mean, you know, obviously we do a lot of work with children as well, and it does show that early intervention does work, and we carry any habits that we do through to adult life. So I think any teenager or young person who is looking at their sleep will become educated and aware and actually carry that through, so that they'll be mindful as they grow older about things that they can do to help their sleep, and obviously realise why sleep's a priority and why it needs a value in society as well.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And I definitely think that we've learned a lot about, the functions of sleep, how we can get a better night's sleep, and also as well, how we can kind of implement that from this age. And obviously people who are watching who are younger, and how they can implement it into their daily life and kind of keep it going into adulthood as well, just to kind of have a better holistic lifestyle, which is really cool. So if people want to know more about you, where can they find you? Plug all your social media platforms, go for it, have fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you can find the Sleep Charity we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram as the Sleep Charity. We obviously have the Sleep Charity website, and as I said, from next week we're also launching our Teen Sleep Hub website, so that's teensleephub.org.uk, and on that, as I said, it'll be packed full of information aimed at teens, including a downloadable ebook as well.
Brilliant. Thank you everyone for listening as well. Don't forget you can follow us too. You can learn more about what we're doing by following us on @onpointwm on Instagram and Twitter, and also following the hashtag ThriveCasters, and let us know what you think about our episode, which is how important is sleep. And so, stay tuned. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back soon with conversations that matter to you.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at onpointwm and hashtag ThriveCasters. Join us next time for more conversations that matter to you.